It's great to be in my own backyard, to be able to join you once again. I guess living in Saratoga, it was my choice. I retired from calling races here 8 years ago, and I pretty much could have lived anywhere I want. I've lived all over. I used to live in Italy. I've lived in Manhattan, and all over the country. And I chose to live in this town, and it is great. I love living here in Saratoga. It's so horse racing centric, which suits me quite nicely. You're in the 1863 building, and it's not a name that they just picked out of the sky. 1863 was the first year that they had organized thoroughbred racing here in Saratoga. We had it across the street in the Oklahoma area. There's actually the vestiges of an old harness track there that was built in the 1830s. The old gray mare, as a matter of fact, made some of her bones at that harness track across the street. And in 1863, Saratoga, you gotta imagine what this town was like. It was the biggest resort in the world. It remained that way until maybe the 1950s, when Las Vegas took over to be what Saratoga had always been. We had two hotels in Saratoga. Well, there are many hotels, but two of them, here's how big this place was. The Grand Union Hotel and the United States Hotel on Broadway had dining rooms in 1860 that accommodated 1,800 people apiece. Now that is big, and people would come here, and they came for the water, of course, and blah, 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 to get out of the city, but they did come here to gamble, and they didn't really have anything to do in the afternoons, so because at nighttime they went to the gambling, or they went to the bordellos. This was a wide open town. It was Vegas long before there was Vegas. And so this guy named John Morris came up with the idea, well, let's have horse racing. So he got together some horses, put them together, and they raced across the street at that 1847 track. It was such a great success that he and his partners bought up this land that you see right now. And they put up a proper grandstand in 1864. The building that you see now that is the grandstand was, that's the second building we had. So that's the new one. It was built in 1895. And business was so good, and I really want you, if you've never done so, just go into that building and look around. It's made of timber. This part is the new part, the clubhouse. You'll see steel in there. That was built in 1929. There was another building there before that. But the 1895 building, they wanted to expand it in 1905. You can still go over and look at this. They took the building. The track at that time was a mile, okay? But in 1905, they changed it to 1.1 1/8. Big renovation to what you see right now. It's the exact same track we've been operating on since 1905. But they wanted to expand the building itself. So there are no engines at this time or whatever, or cranes. They needed to expand the building. They literally sawed it in half. And they pulled half of it this way and half of it that way and filled in 3,000 seats in between. And you can go underneath that grandstand now and look to see where they made that cut. They did this all with horses pulling wagons. It was unbelievable. And then we had a couple renovations. If you look over to the left over here, you see those horse heads? It kind of looks like Art Deco. And it is Art Deco. There's a lot of Art Deco stuff here at Saratoga. And they did, you'll see it in the back, a lot of ironwork like that. That was in 1929, right at the heart of the Art Deco movement. And then they had, and they also expanded the track and put on that new clubhouse. We had another renovation in 1964 for the 100th anniversary, and they put in escalators, and that's when they started with those old red and white canopies that you see all over the place now. It's become a trademark of Saratoga. And the newest addition is this building you're in right now. Believe it or not, there were a lot of people that thought this was a bad idea. This is Saratoga, this is traditional. You can't put up a building like that. It's got air conditioning. Oh, geez. That's a bad idea in August in the Mohawk Valley, air conditioning. And they've worked it seamlessly into the architecture of this great building. And but I do encourage you to go over it. This isn't like a Disney-fied version of what a Victorian track would be. This is the real deal. This is the real thing. You can go, the wood beams are holding up that grandstand over there. You can go in and just see it, and it's pretty much what you saw back in the 19th century. And racing, of course, has made Saratoga what it is today. If it weren't for this racetrack and the enormous popularity of this racetrack, Saratoga Springs would just be another decaying upstate town. Sorry to say. But the racetrack is what is the engine that has powered this place into becoming the destination that it is. And it's not only just an August destination anymore. Saratoga is not this sleepy little town that wakes up during the racing season anymore. I live here. It's a buzzing, happening place 12 months a year. We're a regional destination for lots of conventions. And when the meeting moved to 5 weeks and then to 6 and now to almost 7, that gave restaurants the opportunity to make money. There was only one good restaurant when we were open for 24 days a year. That was Ciro's. There's now 30 good restaurants in Saratoga, and it's just exploded. And Saratoga's just become one of the most vibrant cities in New York, and the only reason for that is because of the racing that we're such a part of and why we're all here today. As I mentioned, I could have lived anywhere, and I admit I do have to get out of here during the wintertime. I grew up in Chicago. I spent 5.5 years in college in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Not a good student, maybe because I never went to class when it was snowing, but it's just a wonderful place to just walk down the street. There's a guy that owns the bank. There's my dry cleaning guy. And everybody, and it's just infused with horse racing. It's just, there's the guy that owned Funny Side who won the Kentucky Derby. Hey, Jack, how many times do you get stopped and get your autograph? It's just unbelievable. You're a star here in Saratoga. Go to New York City, you're just another bum, but that's okay, Jack. So enjoy the town, and again, make sure. And if you're still around Wednesday, please make sure you head to the races. Oh, just a little business here. Because that building is made of wood, we are very, very conscious about fires here at Saratoga. There's always several fire marshals on hand, and they might take me away in cuffs unless I remind you that the exits are right behind me and through that door. Okay? Very good. Now, you've checked in, you've got your credentials, I'm told to hold up my, okay? Make sure you read that, the conference magazine. If you have any questions, just ask any other folks that are here to answer your questions. That you can tell they've got these gold stickers on their lanyards, and they'll answer any questions you have. No question is out of line. They know everything. They know the name of the unknown soldier. Go ahead and they know everything they need to know. And we want to thank our conference hosts, Owner View, and the Blood Horse, as well as the Jockey Club, and the Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders Association. And thanks to our presenting sponsor, the New York Racing Association, the NYRA, who signed my paycheck for 23 years in a row. Thank you for my car, thank you for my house, thank you for my gray hair and all the agita, but beyond that, thank you very much. Now, it's up to me to introduce the Chief Revenue Officer. And revenue is kind of like a key word. Is the Chief Revenue Officer. Business is up here at Saratoga 18%. Gasoline's $24 a gallon. We're headed into a recession, and our business is up 18%. And our Chief Revenue Officer and President of NYRA Bets and NYRA TV, it's the Fox shows are great. They're just so much fun to watch. The content is great. It's not, two knuckleheads says, hey, I like the tree over the 4, give me the 5 with the 6 and the 7 underneath, and it's not that. It's a great show with a lot of content that is most enjoyable for people of any ability in horse racing, handicapping ability. He spent much of his career building state-of-the-art wagering and television production platforms in a variety of sports organizations. He introduced and implemented new strategy for video content for the racing form. He served as coordinating producer and the launch of the Jockey Club Tour series on Fox Sports 1. He served as a coordinating producer for the NFL Network. He oversaw day-to-day operations of the network's flagship show, NFL Total Access. He began his career like so many guys in the TV business now, because I was in it for a long time. I can't tell you how many guys I've met in the TV business that started out as a production assistant on Monday Night Football getting coffee for all the big shots. Well, he's the big shot now and says, make mine a double latte and no skim milk, please. He worked at Wide World of Sports and Monday Night Football. And, needless to say, he has done a magnificent job here at NYRA with these Fox Sports 1 shows. They've improved our business astronomically. And ladies and gentlemen, and by the way, you're never going to see an entrance for a racetrack executive like you're about to see. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Tony Allevato making a grand entrance.
I was supposed to come through with, there it is, the smoke machine.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Allevato.
Thank you. I got to say, I never thought I would ever be introduced by Tom Durkin. Tom, I know you said NYRA wrote you those checks for 23 years. Good news, that last check is finally cleared. You can go ahead and cash it now, Tom. Hello, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to Saratoga. On behalf of the New York Racing Association, I want to welcome you all. It's an honor to be here for this important event. You may be asking, why did I come out with a smoke machine? I like to do that at all the meetings I attend. Just want to make sure people... No, I did that to make a point, because a few years ago, we began introducing the jockeys for major races using the fog machine with music, and we looked at it as a lighthearted way to draw attention to some of the stars of our sports, the jockeys. And believe it or not, when we did this, it came under a lot of criticism from people. I recall one critic saying that the player intros, the jockey intros, reminded him of an NFL or NBA game, as if that was a negative thing. And to me, that was very surprising and almost laughable, having worked in other sports. But it was a clear reminder that there are those of us in the sport that are so attached to tradition that it blinds us from embracing change. And so here at Saratoga Racecourse, NYRA has focused on honoring the history and tradition of the oldest sports venue in the United States. You heard what Tom talked about, the great history of this town and this venue. And so for us, it's always a challenge to, provide the type of amenities that people are looking for in a modern era and give fans what they're used to seeing in other sports while still holding on to that tradition, which makes this place so great. The building we sit in, Tom talked about, the 1863 Club is a great example of that. I have to admit, I was one of the skeptics when I first heard that we were building this building. Traditionally, anything that you build at a racetrack that is past the finish line does not do very well. People who are going to pay a premium for really good seats want to be as close to the finish line as possible. But I think the air conditioning kind of outweighed the sight lines, so it's been great. And if you have a chance to attend the races in Cedar, it is an unbelievable experience. It's truly great. And this venue is amazing. As a person who grew up in California, attended the races at Santa Anita, Hollywood Park, Del Mar, 3 great venues. I always imagined Saratoga as a Del Mar of the East Coast. And not trying to degrade Del Mar at all, but the most eye-opening thing to me was there was a Thursday afternoon in the middle of a Saratoga meet. The weather was similar to this that we're seeing today. And I walked through the backyard, and there were thousands of people there. And you wouldn't see that at any other racetrack in the United States. So it's really a credit to the town and the people that keep coming here and the racing. Anyway, if you look at what we do at NYRA, we are always trying to find ways to improve and hold on to that tradition. If you get a chance and you do walk out and look at the building over the next couple days, please be sure to take a look at the paddock pavilion that we built this year. And it's another example of how we can bring something new that is state-of-the-art inside, but looks like it's been part of the building. I like to call it the treehouse. That's like the unofficial nickname I gave it, because it really does look like a treehouse. But again, that's a building that I think is beautiful, but not without some controversy bringing that in, because people are afraid of change. So, at NYRA, we look to keep making changes and keep this venue state-of-the-art and keep it around for another 150 years. So as you think about the evolution of the sport over the next few days, and you hear from so many important voices, I encourage you to think about how we can embrace new traditions while at the same time honoring the past. It's important to mention that NYRA is a not-for-profit. Unfortunately, I can't use that as an excuse if we don't make any money. But because of that, NYRA is committed to ensuring that the sport is not only sustainable, but grows and flourishes for decades to come. While working for a not-for-profit of this size can have some disadvantages, one of the great advantages as a real horse racing fan is every dollar that we make, we're putting right back into the sport. And that's why you're able to see buildings like this and investments that we make that on paper the ROI isn't going to return right away, but long term it helps the sport sustain. I'm a person who evolved from first a gambler to a fan to an owner and eventually a racing executive. The first 3 were a lot more fun than the last one. I first came to the races, I was introduced to horse racing from my high school football coach. And he would actually send me to Santa Anita to run bets for him and the other coaches during lunch. So I would jump in my car. I wasn't even 18 yet, so I don't know how I was betting. And if they would win, they would give me 10%, which was a really big deal. And I remember one of the first times I went to the races, I was just learning how to read the racing form. And I figured out how to look at the PPs. And then I got to a race, and none of the horses had ever run before. It was a maiden race. So I said to my football coach, I said, what do you do when you've got a race like this? He said, well, you look at the workouts, and here's what you look at, and you look at the breeding. And I looked down, and there's a horse running Sire Seattle Slew. And I thought, oh my God, the son of Seattle Slew is running in this race, and the horse is 4-1. I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. So I run to the window, I bet $20 or whatever I've got in my pocket on him, and the horse wins by 5 lengths. And I think, oh my God, this is easy. Then the 2 races later, there's another maiden race, and I look down, and there's 3 sons of Seattle Slew. And I thought, oh, how many kids does this guy have? I had no idea. I literally thought I was betting like his only child, and I had figured something out. So it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. So early on in my career, I made a decision that I wanted to be in sports television. I actually wanted to be in front of the camera. And I worked for local cable TV stations, did a lot of things in television. And through someone that I had met, my name was given to ABC Sports as a potential gopher, PA, a production assistant. And they called me and said, hey, we're doing the Santa Anita Derby this weekend. We were given your phone number. Would you be interested in coming out and working as a gopher for us? All you have to do is sit in the production truck and answer the phone and say, ABC Sports Santa Anita, put the person on hold and find whoever they're calling. I said, sure, no problem. This weekend was the same weekend as the Oscars, so they had a shortage of people to work as gophers. So I came down and I'm sitting in the production truck, and it was actually the Monday Night Football crew that was producing the telecast. And someone would say, hey, Dwayne Lucas has 3 horses in this race, but they're not running as an entry. Can someone find out why they're not running as an entry? And I'd say, oh, well, I know the answer to that. In California, the rule is it goes by owner, not by trainer. I said, oh, okay, these are all football people. So it was a really eye-opening event. Side story, a little bit of a tangent. That year was Winning Colors was running in the event, and she won the race by, I think it was like 8 lengths. But in horse racing, as many are aware, that there's a beam at the finish line that when the horses cross that beam, that's what stops the clock that's timing the race. It's similar to the old department stores where you'd walk in and you'd hear the beeping, to let the clerks know that you walked in. So once that beam breaks, the sound goes off. Well, the sound person for ABC Sports realized that he left something in the winner's circle. So as the horses were coming down the stretch, he ran to the winner's circle to go get what he had left. He broke the beam before the horses did. So now as the horses come down to the wire, Winning Colors wins by 8 lengths, and Dave Johnson, who's calling the race for ABC, says, it's Winning Colors, a super filly, and the final time for 1 1/8 miles, 1:44 and 3/5 seconds, a new stakes, track, and world record. And we go down to Jim McKay, and Jim's like, oh, we knew this filly was good, but we had no idea she was this good. Unbelievable. And then, of course, they find out the time was like 1:48 and change. So it was, luckily I was not involved in that part of the production, but I made plenty of mistakes similar to that. So after the race was over, the director came up to me and said, hey, you really did a great job. Would you be interested in coming to the Kentucky Derby and working for us at the Kentucky Derby? And at that time I was still in college. So, and I did, and I went there and I worked for ABC and worked as a gopher and slowly worked my way up to a researcher and did a lot of great sporting events. I covered everything from pro bowling to the Rose Parade. Believe it or not, that was covered by ABC Sports. But I really carved my niche in horse racing, and it was because I had such a passion for the sport, and I did also, to be fair, recognize it as an easier route into television, because the experience I felt in that truck that day was that there's thousands and thousands of people that know, if not millions, that know about mainstream sports, and horse racing was going to be a little bit easier for me to crack into. And then in the early 90s, I started reading about an owner of a racetrack named R.D. Hubbard. He owned a Hollywood Park racetrack, and he introduced Friday night racing at Hollywood Park. And it was somewhat controversial. People looked at it. It was very difficult for the horsemen to stay up late, run their horses at night, get up in the morning and come back. But it was really attracting a new crowd. And he was somewhat of a disruptor. And I thought to myself, this is the kind of person that I would want to work for. So I got a meeting with him and I pitched him on some ideas I had, and he ended up hiring me to come work for him. I think he paid me $35,000 a year, which is probably a lot less than I thought it was going to make. And I worked on television publicity for him and really learned a lot working from him. And he became a mentor for me. And then years later, they started TVG Network. And I was the first production hire for TVG. And we built the network from scratch. And it was when I was at TVG that I decided I wanted to own some horses. And the first horse that I owned, as many people do, was a claiming horse. I spent $8,000 on a horse. The horse was a son of Bertrando, who was a classic type horse. And he had actually run in the Pacific Classic, and he was towards the tail end of his career, this horse. The horse's name was Speedy Pick. And I needed to find a race for him to run. So we somehow my trainer convinced the racing office to write $10,000 claiming race at 1.25 miles. Probably the only $10,000 claiming race ever at Hollywood Park that was run at 1.25 miles. And the race was on a Friday night, and Hollywood Park was terrific. They allowed literally every person. It was almost like a bigger attendance than my wedding in terms of the people that came out. All my friends, everybody came out. We got them seats. They were able to attend the races, and my horse won by 6 lengths. And again, I thought, this is easy. It's my first horse. I'm 1 for 1. He just won by 5 lengths. Took me another 2 years to win my second race. But that night, and in the winner's circle, we had 75 people for the race. And I can honestly say that was one of the best experiences of my life. And having people that were the closest to me around. And, I always say you never see people walking to the winner's circle. At worst, they're skipping, because it is just such a great feeling. And when you're walking that winner's circle, you're not thinking about, here's what the purse was, here's how much I paid, this is my profit. It's just about winning. And for me, I felt like I had won the Kentucky Derby. It was the greatest feeling. And unfortunately, I did think it was going to be a lot easier than it actually was. The next horse that I owned, I was on my honeymoon in Italy, and it was the day that Michael Jackson died, which probably was not a great sign. And I received a phone call from a friend of mine who sold horses. Says, hey, I've got an opportunity to buy a really, really good horse and bring the horse to the United States. This is a grade 1 type stakes horse. And would you reach out to Artie Hubbard, the gentleman that I had worked for years earlier, who I was still close to, and see if he wants to buy the horse. It's a $700,000 horse. He said, if you buy the horse, they'll give you a 5% commission on the horse. Well, I'm not a person who buys and sells horses, so I didn't feel comfortable with that, and I didn't feel comfortable making money off of someone who I looked up to. I said, well, I don't want 5% of the horse. I don't want a 5% commission, but I'll take 5% of the horse. Why don't they just give me 5% of the horse? So I called Artie Hubbard and I said, hey, there's an opportunity to buy this horse. I told him all about it. And I said, if you go, I was very transparent. I said, they're going to give me 5% of the horse. And he said, well, who's selling the horse? And he goes, let me call them directly. So he calls them. A few hours later, he calls them back. Great news. We bought the horse. I need you to send me a $35,000 check for your 5%. And I'm thinking, how the hell did this just happen? I went from someone who was going to pay me $35,000 to now I'm paying $35,000. In the meantime, I'm there with my wife, who I've been telling, don't use the mini bar. The stuff in there is too expensive. And now I got to break it to her that we just spent $35,000 on a horse. But the horse ended up running second in a grade 1 race, and we had a lot of success with it, and it was a lot of fun. I owned a horse that ran at Bay Meadows Racetrack, and my wife and I flew up there for the day, and the horse won at 16-1, and it was really a terrific experience. So, I've always looked at the experiences that I had as an owner and hope that I could replicate that or be a part of replicating that for people down the road. At NYRA, as Tom mentioned, I'm responsible for all things revenue related. So that's parking and programs to wagering at the track to online wagering. And for those of you who aren't familiar, literally maybe less than 5% of the wagering is coming from on track these days. It's all being done from home. And so when we talk about me overseeing television or the television product, how important it is, 95% of the dollars that are being bet are coming off of the signal that's coming off of that TV. And it's not just the Fox shows, it's simulcast, it's people watching on their app. And if you look at the production that's being done by NYRA on a daily basis, we have 35 cameras that are here on a daily basis. To put that in perspective, a college basketball game is done with 7 cameras. So it's a major production. I don't know if you watch our shows, something you may notice is very subtle. We installed what we call a cable camera. It's literally a camera that sits on a cable on the back stretch about 35 feet and runs the length of the stretch and follows the horses. It's similar to what you'd see in the Olympics with swimming or track and field where they've got a camera tracking them. So again, that's a credit to NYRA and the fact that they've made such an investment in the infrastructure here to do those things. So from a TV standpoint, we started these Fox shows in 2016. At that time, we were on TVG, and we looked at TVG, and I have a lot of friends that work at TVG. They do a terrific job of covering races, but they do show a lot of races. And so you'll see a race every 5 to 10 minutes. And we feel like our content at Saratoga and NYRA in general is really the Premier League of horse racing. And we wanted our racing to have as much coverage as possible so that we felt that the stories needed to be told about horse racing, the stories of the horses, the people on the backstretch, and the owners. And so we made a decision at that time to move to Fox Sports. And the first year we did it, we did 80 hours of television. Last year, we did 900 hours. Imagine 900 hours on a mainstream sports television where you've got people who are watching a soccer match or a baseball game. It ends, and now they're watching horse racing. And it's been terrific for our business. But one of the rules we have on our show is that every day we've got to interview at least one owner, and pre-race as well as post-race. And the reason we've done that is because we've wanted to make the owner experience, make it part of the owner experience. A news flash for many in the room that may not know this, sometimes owning a horse can be a losing proposition. I just want to break that to you. But as an operator, it's important for us to make the experience as good as possible. So the way we looked at it is, it's, you know, for a person like myself who owned a horse that ran in a grade 1, but my best experience as an owner was with an $8,000 claiming race. For those people who are attending the races, it's a big deal for them as well. So if part of the experience of coming to the races is knowing that you can potentially get on national television, we think that adds to the experience, and we've tried to do that. You know, people say there's a shortage of horses currently, and the horse population is down 50%. But I'd say there's a shortage of owners as well, and and part of that's on the racing industry and how we've treated. I look at some of these syndicates now and microshares, and I think that's a big opportunity for horse racing, because you're introducing a big group of people at a low price point into the game. But from a racing industry, we've got to embrace those syndicates and those groups. I remember at Belmont last year, I had one of the microshare companies reach out to me and say, hey, we have a horse running on Saturday at Belmont. It was just a normal Saturday, and they said, we've got a big group coming. Can you give us some kind of a discount on admission tickets? And I said, okay, no problem. I said, we'll just get everybody comped. He said, well, hold on, it's over 200 people. I said, okay, no problem. I said, really? Well, how many seats could we purchase? I said, we'll give you whatever seats you need. I said, you're going to give us 200 seats? I said, well, the building holds 80,000 people. Like, at some point, you've got to kind of step back and just think about it big picture. And he said, all right, what about the paddock? How many people can get in the paddock? I said, well, the paddock holds 3,500 people. We can get everybody in the paddock. Just tell them to behave. And to me, it was a very eye-opening experience. And one of the things that came up, having talked to some syndicates and some of these microshare companies, is even the winner's circle experience. They have to have lotteries for people to be able to go to the winner's circle, which to me is complete nonsense. The fact that you could have a horse, be fortunate enough to have a horse win a race, and you can't even go in the winner's circle for the photo. And you know, I was told, well, the winner's circle isn't big enough to accommodate some of these groups. And I said, okay, well, let's do 2 winner's circle photos then. Pull the horse out. It's an extra 2 minutes, and bring the next group in and take a second winner's circle photo. Or put one group on the track and the other group in the winner's circle, and literally turn the horse around and turn the camera around and take a second winner's circle photo. And I think sometimes in horse racing, we get so caught up in this is the way we do it. And to just take a step back and say, wait a second, there are exceptions to the rules. Now look, if that same phone call came this week and someone said, I've got 200 people that want to come to the races on Saturday at Travers or Saratoga, we wouldn't be able to make that accommodation. But let's be honest, Saratoga is a little bit out of the norm. For the most part, most racetracks and most meets, we can accommodate the people that are going out. So I look back at my experience that I had as an owner that first night, and my goal is to try and replicate that as much as we can with everybody. So, you know, in conclusion, for those of you that are in the audience that are owners, I thank you for supporting the sport that has given me everything that I have in my life. And for those of you and those of us that work in the industry, I encourage you to look to entertain, engage, and accommodate the owners that visit our tracks. Don't be married to outdated guidelines, policies. Embrace the smoke machine, because change can be a good thing. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.